It's good to be back from the dead. I'm so glad I get to experience more phone games. But in all seriousness, you may have been expecting another negative, whiny review about how much I hate gacha games. But this one was a little different. This one was surprising. By the end of my playthrough, I couldn't believe that I thought, wow, this is one of the better games in the series. April Fools! It was trash like the rest of them. Ooh, Maze, you got that toy? Maze, you got that toy? Don't jump on the bed, Maze. Maze, the camera. Maisie, the camera. Okay. I don't know what to say anymore about these games, man. Gacha equals bad. End of review. Remember back when we were wondering why Brave Exvius was lasting as long as it is? When it had a sequel with just as predatory mechanics? We still don't know why, but actually, War of the Visions Final Fantasy Brave Exvius is a prequel about a long age of tactical warfare that occurred in an undisclosed amount of time before the first game. And that is just about the extent of what I'm gonna be able to tell you about the story, because I skipped every cutscene. Time for the usual disclaimer I give in all of my gacha reviews that people still don't listen to, but I'm going to say it anyway. Disclaimer: I in no way intend on this being a definitive review of insert gacha game here. I have no opinion on the story of this game because I ignored it. My opinion on the gameplay is somewhat valid, though only from an extremely casual perspective, playing exclusively story missions on auto mode in a short period of time. I have played through this game for one and only one reason: to be able to truly say I have reviewed every Final Fantasy game for the YouTube video series Reviewing Every Final Fantasy or I Die. Now usually this would mean I skipped to the last season of the story and played up to the latest update, because that is the quickest way to get it over with and the only technical way you can beat a game like this. But unfortunately, this game did not have that skip feature. I guess it's just too new. We're only on season 3, maybe once we get to 4 they'll let you skip, but for now, you have to beat the first chapter of season 1 and then you can skip most of that. But you gotta play through all of season 2 and 3, which is almost at the end, so that's 2 whopping seasons, multiple years of story that I had to actually play this time instead of skipping. And so, welcome to the review of the game with the longest play time aside from MMOs in REFFOID history. 58 hours. What makes this game take so long? A few things, but the biggest thing is that it's a tactics game. The combat of War of the Visions has little to nothing to do with the original Brave Exvius. But it's not just a tactics game, it's a Final Fantasy tactics game. What surprised me a lot about it is how faithfully War of the Visions recreates the original PS1 classic. The original Brave Exvius was developed entirely by Gummy, but this game actually had help from an official Square Enix development team. And you could tell the way charge attacks work, the way you can attack a unit or an area. There's this little number in the corner, the stupid scream units make when they fall, and then the counter that appears above their body indicating how much time you have left to raise them before they die. So many things directly lifted from the original tactics game. It seems clear to me that the developers are fans of Final Fantasy Tactics and wanted to make a spiritual successor of sorts. That's pretty cool. So, how does Gacha ruin it? Well, if you remember what visions are from Brave Exvius, they're like summoned beings. They're what you actually use as units to fight with, story context be damned. That's also where the crossover with other Final Fantasies happens. But by now, The Brave Exvius universe is a huge universe of characters on its own. I actually never pulled a single character from another game in my playthrough because they aren't made available. If you want a character from, say, Final Fantasy X, or maybe you want Addison Rae, yeah, she's in this one too, well, you should have been around when the limited banner was up. Otherwise, your team will consist of Rain, Glaciela, Amnelis, Marjorie, or Sakura. All my favorite characters. You kinda get what you get, and this comes with the inevitability of gacha games. 80% of your experience playing through the story is completely effortless. During your first week, you get and I can't believe I'm saying this, pretty damn generous amount of stuff to boost yourself up. And you're pulling modern units with 4 years worth of power creep, so strategy, tactical planning, it doesn't matter at all for almost your whole time playing. The game plays itself and your units just blow through everything. Unless you want to play some non-story extra content where you will hit the wall and all of a sudden none of your units do any damage, etc., the same story. I hate how binary the gameplay is with these games. You either sit there and don't have to lift a finger, or it's literally impossible to win. There's no in between. But we're beating a dead horse. I'm trying to avoid repetition here. That's why this video's so short. The sad part is, of all the gacha games I've played on the show, this one feels the most like an actual game. Even more than Opera Omnia in my opinion, which isn't a game anymore because it is now dead. This is gonna get me hate, for sure, but removing the gacha element, War of the Visions actually improves upon Final Fantasy Tactics' systems in a few ways. Here's the crazy thing. There's a tutorial, and it teaches you mechanics. I don't mean a long list acting as a glossary for mechanics. I mean there's a pack of levels that tell you how the game works and lets you play with the mechanics to actually understand them. This is also a new concept for gacha games in general, which seem to not care in the slightest if you know what's going on or what's been obsolete for years. There's an undo button, which should be an absolute requirement for this genre, and I don't even think that was in the remake of Tactics. And this is the most interesting one. It actually reinvents the Zodiac system. Well, it kinda does. It replaces it with a better one. This is a hill I'll die on with people who put Tactics as like their #1 game ever or something. I'll always have this argument. But what about the Zodiac system? It ruins so much of the game because it throws a large amount of pretty much completely random chance into the mix. This game instead has an element system. Each unit is assigned an element that is super effective against one and not very effective against another, displayed via the elemental hexagon thing over here. It's simple, it's understandable. You can see an enemy and know which of your units will be good or bad against it in a glance. However, this makes matters worse for the gacha part, because now you can have a really great unit you got lucky with or even spend money on, but they still might not work if the elements don't match up. That's more relevant for people who play higher difficulty content though. I should say that playing through the story, as long and arduous as it was, required almost nothing from me. When I first heard that this was a Tactics gacha game, I had nightmares about it. I don't love the gameplay systems of the Final Fantasy Tactics series. I hate everything about gacha games. And I was particularly skeptical of how an auto-battle system might work. In most games, it just commands your party to do a basic attack over and over, and that's usually good enough. But it wouldn't be for a tactics game. What a relief it was to see that this auto-battle system is maybe the most intricate one I've ever seen. It basically makes your party fully AI and scans every situation to see what would be the best ability to use. It judges how much damage you might do and will choose to instead use a buff on your team or something if that damage output wasn't good enough. You can set it to always use the strongest version of an attack to hopefully kill things faster, but otherwise it might make a more conservative move to save meter for later or something. It's smart. These games have so many possible moves to take on a given turn, and it's basically programmed to choose the correct one. It'll even have to pause the game for a second to think things through. I was just really impressed. Usually AutoBattle is for when you're mindlessly grinding and you have to turn it off for the real fights, but with this one, I just conceded. The robot was simply smarter than me. If I wanted to play efficiently, the smartest thing for me to do was to let it play itself and spend my time doing other things. You ever fight an AI in chess like online and set it to the highest difficulty? It just kind of knows how to beat you because it's seen every outcome. Basically, if you lose in AutoBattle, you had no chance of winning to begin with, and the problem is your team composition. But that's an extremely rare case for the story missions thanks to power creep. So yes, it did take 58 hours to beat this game, but how much of that was I actually engaged or even looking at the screen? I don't know, you know? It does take a full 60 seconds between missions. I timed it to click through every victory screen, skip the next cutscene, click the next mission, find a new companion unit to bring along, hit go, skip the next cutscene, go to that loading screen and skip the next cutscene and then that loading screen, and then you start the next battle. That's pretty annoying to take your attention away from whatever you were trying to do. So it's not like I was ever away from my phone, but I basically edited the last 3 videos uploaded to this channel while playing War of the Visions. I think there was one day where I had my phone running this for a full 8 hours. Like, I just didn't use my phone that day. I didn't respond to texts or anything. And during the whole playthrough, there was only one single level that gave the AI a problem. It was a tough setup where you face a bunch of archers with a big height advantage and your team is split up. They execute this move called Hail of Arrows, which paints a big AoE on the ground, and if you're caught in it when the time comes, they do a ton of damage. But if you got out of the way, it meant running into enemies who would just hit you next. It was kind of brutal. I had to take control myself and protect the companion unit who was super strong so he could actually kill them, but even then it felt like I got lucky when I finally beat it. I was worried this marked the changing point where I was no longer able to cruise through the rest of the game. But no, every level that followed was beatable with AutoBattle 2 times speed. Could have been faster. There is a 3 times speed option, but it is locked away until you earn an arbitrary amount of royal points. There's 2 ways to get these. You can earn 10 royal points every day if you do all your little dailies. To unlock 3 times speed, it costs 80,000 royal points. That would take approximately 22 years of daily grinding to unlock. This game will not live to be 22. Guess what your other option is? I'll give you one guess. You can earn royal points by buying currency in the shop. But doing the math, getting to 3 times speed would cost you approximately $1,500 just to get 1 extra multiplier on your speed. So yeah, I quickly gave up that dream. 58 hours spent just burning my phone battery running this quote-unquote game. Imagine if I didn't use 2 times speed. We'd be over 100 hours. Imagine if I actually played all of Season 1. Imagine if I didn't skip cutscenes. Playing this game legit would have actually taken longer than Final Fantasy XI. If I had to do that, I would have just stayed dead. By now you know whether or not you respect my opinion on this game. There's 3 types of people watching this. The type of person who has played or is playing this video. They're probably very disappointed in me. They probably stopped watching. Then there's people who never thought about picking up this game even for a second, and they're just watching out of morbid curiosity, maybe to see how bad it is. And third, people who are legitimate gacha gamers who are looking for a new one to pick up. They've probably stopped watching too, but in case they didn't, I'll leave you with this. War of the Visions comes across as a game that can feel like a normal game if you want it to. It is the most generous game in this genre that I've seen, especially if you can follow all those online guides that tell you how to do your first week in the most efficient way, because there's a lot of power you can gain in that first week. I did spend $1 on one of those first week beginner limited time banner things, because it yielded max level ultra rare units. Ultra rare is the highest tier currently. So I filled my team instantly with max level high rarity characters, and that might be the best microtransaction I've ever spent, because those units are probably the reason I coasted through the story so easily. And that's why I'm saying it's generous, because let's compare this to, say, the original Brave Exvius, which didn't have special limited time beginner banners, didn't have a lot of discounts, and everything that you could pull from yielded way less. And because of that, you eventually hit a point where you're just at a wall and none of your units do anything, no matter how powerful they seemed at a moment ago. They can't do anything now, and you have to rely entirely on companion characters, because they're the only character who can even damage opponents at that point. That didn't happen in this game. Now, I did use companions, and they were very helpful, and maybe I wouldn't have finished the level as easily without those for sure, but the point is my units weren't useless. I actually had good units, and they lasted the whole time. Even the story update that came out literally a week ago, we did just fine. And by the way, they update this story really regularly, 10 levels at a time. So, hey, Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis, which gives you like a chapter a month, you can do better. So if you're looking for a game where you want to sit and farm materials forever and build like a huge meta team that's really powerful, that seems like it's what all the hardcore fans do in this game, so it would probably be a good fit for that, but I can't speak any truth to that. If you're looking for a story in your gacha game, I can tell you that you will be able to do that without a lot of hiccups. And there is a lot of story. By my count, there are, and this will be very outdated soon, but 870 levels. Full Final Fantasy Tactics levels. Most of them have cutscenes with 3D characters moving around. Full voice acting for the whole game. Totally free to play, accessible. I mean, if you're a story-driven gacha fan, this sounds like it would be a good one to pick up. And I know I skipped cutscenes, so I can't fairly judge the quality of the story, but I'm gonna take a wild guess and say Season 1's probably mostly boring, kind of generic. Season 2, though, it gets really good, although some people think that Season 3 ruins the characters, other people say it's even better. With that, really short episode, sorry about that. It's one gacha game, what can I do? We're over these. This is like senioritis, we're getting to the finish line here. But before we go, I must confess something. In my Final Fantasy VII Remake video, I said that game was the last of the PS4 age, and that we had technically made it through every game that came out before I started REFFOID, because at the time, I would have technically completed every Final Fantasy game that came out. That wasn't entirely true. That was sort of a consolation prize I gave myself for not meeting the deadline and actually finishing all the games. But even that was unfair, because this game came out in the West about a month before Remake. Because remember when Remake got delayed like 1 month? It was coming out in March and then it was April. Well, this game came out in March. And also, Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers came out before Remake as well. So now, only now, are we actually done with the PS4 live age, as I called it. And we're finally ready to move on to the modern era. We're ready for the PS5 age, where 4K graphics are now the standard, where video game production cycles have inflated even more to account for that. In a post-pandemic world where everything had to stop, including video game production, for a while. Would you believe that the next big game we haven't talked about yet is Final Fantasy XIV again? They did a couple remasters, but nothing new until the next expansion of Endwalker. I just did the Shadowbringers video. We're just getting started playing Endwalker, so it's a little too soon for that. if we were to rush through the whole thing to get this video out in the normal scheduled time, it would just be chaos. It would just be chaos.
I'm here to kill chaos. That's my mission. Looks like chaos has been waiting for us.